All right. Uh, Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to see everyone here. We have a very exciting meeting today. Uh, we are going to be going through quite a bit of business. So I'm linking the agenda currently in chat. But this is going to be a great meeting. We have the 4 DA candidates here seeking our endorsement. So we're going to have a good conversation with them where we will hear from them, ask them some questions, and then decide on who we would like to endorse as a club. And then we're going to go over some environmental issues as well as some safety issues. And then if hopefully we'll have time to talk a little bit about some clarifications in the recent bylaws changes. Because we have such a packed agenda, I really want to get rolling on it. But I do want to just briefly acknowledge that today is a lot going on. So I want to open this meeting in honor of all of our African-American and Black friends throughout the country. This is African-American History Month, and there are so many contributions, and I think it's just absolutely wonderful that we're having an opportunity to meet a very diverse set of candidates for the DA race, and we have such a wonderful group of candidates. We're absolutely blessed to be entering a DA's race where we have multiple wonderful candidates to choose from. It's not a case of holding your breath and picking someone. This is going to be a real challenge where I know personally, having met all of the candidates, that it is going to be very difficult for me to choose. And I think this is going to be a really informative meeting and really a great chance to hear from everyone, learn a little bit about them, and make up our minds. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about what we are going to be doing, a little bit about what we're going to be doing for the format of this event. It is going to be we're going to open up with candidate statements from each of the candidates. Each candidate will be given 5 minutes to introduce themselves however they'd feel. After that, we're going to turn it over to the members of the club. You can ask questions either in chat or by just raising your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature, and I will call on people. I always prefer it when people ask their own questions instead of me reading a whole bunch of them. So don't be shy. Feel free to just raise your hand, come in with your questions. For the questions, I ask the candidates to keep their answers to about a minute, 90 seconds at the most. If you really need a little longer, I understand, but try to keep it concise because there are 4 of you and we don't have forever to spend on the debate, unfortunately. At the end, I'll turn it back to the candidates for a short 2-minute just outro. You can say thanks, share any final thoughts, anything you want to touch on in that last little bit, but just a quick little outro for everyone. And then we'll turn it over to the club for voting. The voting tonight will be sent over, voting tonight is going to be sent over via email. So we're going to do it a little bit differently. So instead of just posting the link, all of the members of the club who are here will be emailed the ballot so that you can get that. It'll make it a little bit easier for our secretary to track all of the votes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the candidates. Let me set up my timer. And I'm going to start with Terry Wiley.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Evan, and thank the TriValley Democratic Club. One justice. My campaign stands for safety and justice. One system of justice that's fair to everyone and protecting everyone. Not one system for Black, not another for white, not one for the rich, not one for the poor. One system that protects everyone and treats everyone fairly. I come from a family of 12 children. My dad passed away when I was 7, and my mom was left with 8 kids at home. The sole provider, she worked as a domestic in Portola Valley on the peninsula. And for most of my young life, I watched her leave at 5:30 and come home at about 7:30 or 8, dragging, tired. And so, you know, very early on, I knew that we had to take care of ourselves, and we had to learn how to get ourselves dressed, feed ourselves, and get to school. But every night that she walked in and I saw her dragging, it inspired me. It inspired me and my twin brother to go out and make the best of every opportunity that we had. And so we approached education like it was very, very important. And it ended at the end of high school with me being accepted to UC Berkeley and my twin brother being accepted to UCLA. We both played football at those universities, and I ran track and field. But the whole time I took my education seriously because I remembered those days of watching my mom come in at 8 o'clock after those long days. Fast forward, I went to law school and I started in the DA's office in 1990. And in my starting class was Vice President Kamala Harris. We both got our initial training as lawyers from the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. From 1993 to 2000, I spent trying some of the most violent criminals in the history of Alameda County, because during that era, Oakland was in a drug war and the murder rate was averaging about 190 murders a year. So we were dealing with a lot of serious crime. But I can only describe my career after that as only as groundbreaking, because I then got promoted after I tried the Ryder's case, which was the largest police corruption case in the history of Alameda County. I became the head of the South County Felony Trial Team, and after that, I got promoted to Assistant 1 District Attorney, and eventually became the first African-American Director of Recruitment and Development. In other words, I became the first African-American hiring DA for the Alameda County DA's office. I was then promoted and sent to the Juvenile Division, and I'm the only candidate in this race that has run the Juvenile Division. And between 2013 and 2017, I was tasked with turning the Juvenile Division around. And by the time I left in 2017, the incarceration rate of juveniles had dropped 70%. So we were very successful, and that trend continues to this day, which is why I was recently honored by the Boys and Girls Club of Oakland with the Game Changer Award for the long-lasting impact that I had on the Juvenile Division. I was also promoted to be the director of our groundbreaking Director of Diversity, our Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, where I created the 3-module implicit bias training that all employees of the Alameda County DA's office must now complete. And that includes the science of implicit bias, the history of implicit bias, and how implicit bias plays out on a daily basis through microaggressions. I was also in July, named the Chief Assistant of the District Attorney's Office. And so I am now the first African-American Chief Assistant in the history of Alameda County. And outside of the District Attorney's Office, I was, in 2016, I was named to the State Bar of California Board of Trustees, where we were responsible for managing $142 million budget of the State Bar of California, which is the largest bar in the country. I currently sit on the American Bar Association's prestigious Criminal Standards Committee, where we set the criminal standards throughout the country, both federal, state, and local prosecutors and defense attorneys. And I'm also a past vice president of the National Bar Association. And this is why I've been endorsed by Congressman Eric Swalwell, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, City Manager Barbara Parker. I've been endorsed by most of the labor unions, including the Teamsters Union of the District Attorney's Office. So I've been endorsed in a landslide election by our rank and file DAs. But I've also been endorsed by someone you would not expect a 32-year veteran of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office to be endorsed by. I've been heavily endorsed by the civil rights community. I've been endorsed by Pamela Price's former partner, John Burris. And when I went to John Burris for his endorsement, he goes, "I have no hesitation because you are the right person to take over the future of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office." I've also been endorsed by Benjamin Crump, who represented the family of Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. One last thing, and I've also been endorsed by Lanita Baker, who represented the family of Breonna Taylor. And these have been the voices that are in the forefront of change in our criminal justice system, and they've all endorsed my candidacy. So I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to turn to Pamela next.
Thank you. My name is Pamela Price, and I am running for Alameda County District Attorney because I'm a drum major for justice. Hello, Democrats, and thank you for having us at the TriValley Club. For 30 years, I've worked as a civil rights attorney in Alameda County, successfully arguing against racial harassment in the United States Supreme Court and creating new laws to stop sexual harassment in both education and employment. And let me start by correcting a misstatement by an apparent misunderstanding by Mr. Wiley. John Burris has never been my partner. I have owned and operated my own firm since 1991. When I went to the United States Supreme Court, Mr. Burris came to watch me as a friend. And we used to be friends. We're no longer close, obviously, for particular reasons that have nothing to do with Mr. Wiley. But my story begins in Cincinnati, Ohio, when I became engaged in the civil rights movement at a very young age. I was both traumatized and radicalized in the moment when Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. I got arrested in a civil rights demonstration when I was 13 years old. I got tracked into the foster care and the juvenile justice system, and I literally made it from the streets of Cincinnati to Yale College by the grace of God. My foster moms were working women as well, and they worked hard, and they instilled in me the value that education is the one thing that no one can take from you. And that's what they told me over and over again. Get your education. That's the one thing that no one can take from you. And so I was able, like I say, by the grace of God, to make it to Yale College. I got a great education at Yale, and I came to California and graduated from UC Berkeley Law School, and I got a great education there. And I've been representing everyday people for the past 30 years in my own firm. And I'm a person that knows to whom too much is given, much is asked. And so I've been honored to serve Alameda County as a lawyer, as an activist, and to raise my family here for the past 40 years. I decided to run for Alameda County District Attorney because for too long, prosecutors have forgotten that their mission is to protect public safety by advancing justice. In Alameda County, the racial disparities under the incumbent leadership over the last 10 years and beyond has been horrendous. Between 2010 and 2016, a Black child was 65 times more likely to be charged as an adult than a white child. A Latino child was 27 times more likely to be charged as an adult than a white child. In 2014, Alameda County was one of only 9 counties in the entire state of California where the only children charged as adults that year were Black or brown children. That's the legacy of juvenile justice that some people in the DA's office seem to be very proud of. That's the legacy of juvenile justice and the justice system overall that disturbed me so deeply in 2017 that I was persuaded that I had to step up and challenge a sitting incumbent, which you all know as Democrats and as Democratic Party activists, that's very difficult. I'm the first person to run for this seat since 1966. The last person who ran was a civil rights attorney like myself, who believed that racial discrimination and police brutality in Alameda County was unacceptable. His name was Bob Truhaft, and he was such a legendary figure in our community that when he passed, Maya Angelou came to his funeral and wrote a poem in his honor. I should be so lucky, right? But who knows what will happen. My goal at this point is to bring to the Alameda County District Attorney's Office and our criminal justice system a new brand of justice, justice with compassion. We have failed system impacted people, whether they're victims, survivors of crime, defendants, their families, the mentally ill. Our system is broken. And what you're going to hear from every candidate here tonight is that this system is broken. And the real question before you is who has the courage, the tenacity, and the wisdom to start to fix it. It won't happen in one term. It may not happen in 2 terms, but we have to start somewhere. And I'm prepared to start that. I'm fully qualified to do that. So often, when a woman steps forward and says, I can do this, I want to do something, people demean and belittle her, they diminish her. I've experienced all of that in 2018. But I'm proud that in 2018, I did run. And now we have many more candidates who suddenly have decided that, yes, we do need change in this system. This is an open race for the first time since 1939. So I look forward to the discussion, and I appreciate that you all have taken the time to allow us to come before you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Evan, about the time.
No, you were right on. So
Thank
perfect. Thank you so much. Next up will be Jimmie.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. You know, our community is in a crisis. Our house is broken. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney because I believe safety is a civil right. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney to keep your family and your neighbors safe. For the past 3 years, we've been saturated with stories of takeover robberies, car break-ins, burglaries, a number of shootings, a high number of murders. 17 years ago, I joined the DA's office. It was my second career. The one thing I knew about our office was that we're not perfect. But when I first started, we cared about public safety. Today, I have to tell you, the district attorney's office is unresponsive to the needs of the community. There's a lack of accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, we need new leadership. We all agree. I agree with Ms. Price and everyone else that the system is broken. But I'm not here merely to complain about it. I'm here to fix it. The choice is not whether or not we're going to be stuck in the past. The choice is whether we're going to move forward and think about public safety in a different way. Tell you a little bit about my goals. I believe that we can build a criminal justice system that is true to the community, that we can partner with the community, with nonprofit groups, with faith-based groups, with elected officials. I believe that safety must be proactive, that we must get guns off the streets before the shooting starts, that we need to teach our young people to use their brains and to get away from violence. We need to address trauma in our communities to end the cycle of violence. Most of our Black and brown and poor communities have seen an influx of violence that is generational. In order to reduce crime, we have to have accountability. And when I talk about accountability, I'm not just talking about accountability in adult court, I'm talking about accountability in juvenile court. When I talk about accountability in juvenile court, I'm talking about holding people responsible, then finding ways to divert them away from the criminal justice system. And that doesn't just include juvenile, that includes first-time offenders. I believe that we need to give victims and survivors a voice. I believe that we need to make our community proud of their police forces. I believe that we must pursue environmental laws that will keep us safe and healthy. Tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in San Francisco in Bayview Hunters Point. It's a tough neighborhood. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of crime. A lot of my friends were caught up in the system or involved in gun violence or even homelessness and drug abuse. When I was a child, my home was broken into, and the response of my parents, just like the response of my neighbors, were to put bars around our doors and windows. We want to feel safe. We wanted to feel safe. I tell you today, there are people living in the flatlands that feel the same way that my parents felt. They want to be treated the same way as people living in the hills. They want to feel safe. Ladies and gentlemen, what we need is that we don't need less police, we need better police. We don't need less accountability, we need more productive accountability. we don't need less justice, we need equal justice. When I started in this office, it was under Tom Orloff, and he always talked about our role in the criminal justice system. He always told us that we had to protect the community, that we were seeking justice. And I believe that. We weren't a perfect office, but we had a mandate. We knew what we had to do. And during my career, my 17th career as a district attorney, I have worked ethically and hardworking to bring justice to my community. Let me tell you, for the past 17 years, I've tried some of the most heinous cases you could think of: homicides, child sexual assault, gang cases, anything you can think of. I've worked in specialized units in gang intelligence and sexual assault. I've served on Oakland's Operation Ceasefire. I've been involved in officer-involved shootings. When an officer shoots a suspect, I responded to the scene and started the investigation. None of the other candidates have done that type of work. I'm the only candidate in this race that's worked in crime suppression. I'm the only candidate in this race who has trained police officers in investigation of violent crimes. I'm the only candidate in this race who's out there into the community right now, teaching our police officers about community policing and implicit bias. That is why I am endorsed not just by law enforcement agencies and 2 former police chiefs, but by the defense bar, by my opponents, by members of the Public Defender's Office, by senior members of our office, retired members of our office, including Judge Tom Rogers, who supervised both Mr. Wiley and myself. I have been endorsed by elected leaders and civil rights leaders. I believe that safety is a civil right. That means we are all born to be safe. People in this community deserve to be safe. Alameda County is my home. I love this community and I would do anything to protect it. I'm running for district attorney because I want to build a criminal justice system that is centered around safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And next up will be Seth.
Good evening, everybody, and happy Black History Month. Thank you, TriValley Dems, for putting together this forum. I am honored and excited to be here. I'm running for district attorney for the same reason I decided to go to law school: to make communities safer and more just. Over 20 years ago, I was working in the San Francisco mayor's office. And while I was there, I had an opportunity to try to present a program where the mayor's office was trying to reduce crime by increasing and presenting reward money that led to the arrest, prosecution, and conviction of people in murder cases. And so there were these posters that featured the photographs of victims all throughout the community. And this was in the Fillmore neighborhood, a historical African-American neighborhood in San Francisco. And I was making this presentation at the police station there, the Northern Police Station. And I thought I did a great job. Just finished the presentation. The meeting was wrapping up, and an older African-American woman came up to me, and she looked me in my eye and said, "What are you doing about the death of my grandson?" And nothing I could have said would have been enough. And so I decided to go to law school, and I became a prosecutor to make communities safer, to make communities more just. In 2008, I was hired by Kamala Harris while she was the district attorney in the city and county of San Francisco to be a DA there. I tried a number of different cases, over 70 jury trials, including arson, domestic violence, hate crimes, and general felonies, which are robberies, burglaries, stabbings, shootings, theft, etc. I also worked a number of cases that were in neighborhood courts, community court, drug court, behavioral health court, and My last stint was in the Crime Strategies Unit in the San Francisco DA's office. While I was working there, I took a year off to attend Harvard University, where I earned a degree. And while I was going to school there, 2 men blew up the Boston Marathon. Following that event, I signed up to join the United States Air Force, where for the last 8 years, I served as a flight engineer on a combat search and rescue helicopter. In 2018, I was in Iraq. I served there, and then just last year, I was in Kenya. The motto for Air Force Rescue is these things we do that others may live. I bring that same level of dedication and purpose to everything I do. These things we do that others may live. It's exactly what the role of a prosecutor is, to make sure that people are safe. Also, while I was a prosecutor, I took some time to work in the educational arena. I became a teacher. I taught part-time at Oakland Technical High School, because we all know that if you catch people at the front end, we don't have to catch them at the back end. Everybody here said education is important. I'm the one that has dedicated part of my time to that belief, to make sure that the people that are graduating out of Oakland Tech have an opportunity to be successful. I also taught at City College of San Francisco for that same reason. In addition to that, currently, I work as the Chief of Staff for Oakland City Council member Dan Call. And in that role, I've drafted legislation banning chokeholds and carotid restraints by the Oakland Police Department. And that was following the death of George Floyd. And just recently, we banned ghost guns and ghost gun kits in the city of Oakland. I'm very proud of those pieces of legislation. As a proven prosecutor, decorated veteran, public school teacher, and policy leader, my lived experiences give me a distinct and unique viewpoint and understanding of not only the criminal justice system, but the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office is broken, and the system is also broken. I join a wave of district attorneys who are changing that system in Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Manhattan, Portland, Oregon, and Contra Costa. All of these DAs are saying enough. We need change. As district attorney, I will make sure that our resources are focused on violent crime. I will make sure that we expand alternative courts and reduce recidivism. And I will lead outside of the courthouse to bring innovative solutions to address the root causes of crime. You will hear from all of us today. And when you do, ask yourself, who is the best person to bring change to the system? Thank you for your time. My name is Seth Steward, and I look forward to the opportunity to earn your vote.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to be turning over to the question and answer section. I'm gonna just a couple of things for clarification, just to make sure everyone knows. So again, I'll be asking members to ask any questions that they may have, or actually members or anyone in the audience. So any of our non-member friends who are here visiting us today are welcome to ask questions as well. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature. You can also put a question into chat and I will read them. But I do prefer, personally, I prefer when people ask questions themselves. I think it makes for a more interesting meeting. I will be keeping the order the same for the candidates as we just went through. We'll be rotating with who starts in the order each time. So you can prepare knowing when you'll be up in the order. So for example, since we started with Terry last time, we'll start with Pamela on the first question. A very important thing for all of our members as you're asking questions is I do ask everyone here, if you're going to ask a question of the candidates, please keep it to one that is for all of the candidates. I'm not looking for questions, and I would ask you to rephrase or we'll cut off questions that are specifically for one candidate. That's not helpful for all of us. So please keep it to something for all the candidates. And candidates, when you're responding, because we don't have a ton of time, please keep your answers concise to around 60 seconds if you can. So please be as concise as possible. With that, I just want to briefly pause for one moment before we started. And Jimmie, can we check your mic again? The sound levels were a little bit low.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're a little bit quiet.
How's it now?
A little better. Can you turn it up a little further, or?
I think that's about as loud as it goes.
Okay, that was clearer. All right. Thank you with that. And then I believe our first question is going to come from Marisol. So Marisol, take it away.
Thank you so much, Evan. So my question for everyone is, there are millions, even billions of Me Too survivors who have been ignored by our criminal justice system. What have you done to ensure that women are believed first and get a fair hearing? How many sexual assault cases have you taken on and successfully represented? I do have also an associated question in terms of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who tend to be sexually assaulted at 7 times the rate of the general population. What steps, measures will you take to ensure that there's systemic change and that we are no longer covering up for institutions who do not report these incidents and improve transparency? Thank you.
Thank you. And Pamela, you would be the first to answer.
Sure. Evan, is there a way for you to show the clock or give us like a 10-second or maybe 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'll put in chat a warning, a 15-second warning in chat. I don't have a way to show the clock, unfortunately.
All right, I'll try to pay attention to that. Okay, we're starting now. All right,
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. My life's work has been protecting victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment. I'm actually one of the pioneers of Title IX, which opened the door for women in education based on my own sexual harassment case. I'm also a survivor of both domestic violence and sexual assault. I've represented hundreds of women and men who have experienced sexual assault and litigated those cases and successfully gotten compensation. Most famously, I think, is the case we've done a number of sexual assault cases against the Department of Corrections and won several $million-dollar judgments. But with the city of Oakland, we represented 2 young women who were sexually assaulted by a city employee, and they each got $750,000, $800,000. So I've been in the business of getting compensation for victims, as well as helping them to rebuild their lives, which has been critical. I've represented survivors of violent crimes, families who have lost loved ones to violent crime, and had to deal with the Alameda County criminal justice system. Also, with respect to developmentally disabled people, I've done those cases as well, suing state agencies as well as private facilities where, yes, the truth was hidden away and we had to search and peel the onion to find out who was responsible and what actually happened to this person. So that's been my life's work, and that's the tenacity that I will bring to the district attorney's office and insist that all of my deputies are operating on the same page and towards the same goal, which is to ensure that those who have been victimized in these ways will in fact feel restored and receive some form of healing through our criminal justice system. That's our theme, justice with compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. And next will be Jimmie.
Yes, I spent 3 years in the Alameda County Sexual Assault Unit, trying both adult sexual assault and child sexual assault. What I know is that we need to educate our lawyers better to understand trauma and the effects of trauma as it relates to the people's ability to recall and their memory when it comes to sexual incidents. What I found in a courtroom is that a lot of times sexual assault victims are re-victimized because people expect them to remember what happened verbatim, where the person touched them, when it happened, the time of day it happened, what they were wearing. It's what I understand from my own training. I've taken seminars, I've read literature on sexual assault, that we need to teach our deputies, especially in the DA's office, to understand that the trauma of sexual assault affects the memory, and that victims, especially women, are sometimes re-victimized because people expect them to be perfect. One thing that I'm doing right now is that I'm teaching police officers from different agencies about sexual assault. There's San Leandro right now has a new sexual assault investigators, and I'm talking to them about the trauma and the cycle of trauma that impacts sexual assault victims. So as it relates to victims, I probably of all the candidates in this race, I probably am the expert as it relates to both sexual assault with children and with adult women.
Thank you. And there was a suggestion in chat really quickly, sorry to disrupt. I'll do the raise hand feature just to show that time has run out, and then you can start wrapping up your thoughts. That would be great. With that, next up would be Seth.
Right, that was an incredibly important question, and I'm going to try to answer as much of it as I can. There was questions about sexual assault, about domestic violence, about victims generally, about mentally challenged victims, and what are in transparency, and what is the plan for those things. So I'm going to try to address all of those things in the amount of time that we have. So with regard to sexual assault and mentally challenged victims, we need to understand that victims have suffered trauma. We need to be able to give trauma-informed services to every victim. Every victim has to have the opportunity to feel heard and their case presented seriously. And as district attorney, I will focus on expanding victim rights to include trauma-informed services. In addition to that, I will create a crime victims advisory board representing communities who are disproportionately impacted by crime, including communities of color, LGBT community, and immigrants. All of these things are critical to give victims a voice in the system. I'll also make the DA's office significantly more transparent. We will make sure that we will be smart about crime and follow the science, and we will publish data so all of the citizens that live and work in Alameda County will have an opportunity to hear about what we're doing here in the Alameda County DA's office. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm getting a little bit of feedback as well. If everyone can make sure just to keep yourself muted when you're not speaking. And then last up on this question would be Terry.
Well, Ms. Rubio, I really appreciate that question, because the Alameda County District Attorney's Office is probably one of the leading offices in the nation when it comes to victims' rights. We were the first office in the nation to have a victim witness division. We have one of the most robust victim witness divisions in California. We also have a family justice center that is one of the only family justice centers in California that has a trauma recovery center. And the trauma recovery center focuses specifically on the trauma of victims as they come through the door. And in terms of trauma-informed care, in the juvenile division and the adult division, our lawyers go through trauma-informed care training. As for example, in juvenile, when I was the head of juvenile, through the probation department, we provided trauma-informed care training for all of the lawyers on the juvenile staff. Also at the juvenile level, we created the girls' court, which focused on the trauma that girls in particular were suffering as a result of sexual assault. I'm probably the only lawyer on this panel that has tried a rape case involving a woman involved in human trafficking who was raped in the middle of, if you want to call it a transaction, because I believed that a woman can say no. And it was a very, very complex, difficult trial. and the jury eventually came back with a guilty verdict. And it was one of the first times in the history of Alameda County where someone involved in human trafficking the jury came back with a guilty verdict for rape. So we are very, very keenly aware of the services that victims of sexual assault require. And our lawyers all of the lawyers in our sexual assault unit go to special training, just like Mr. Wilson told you, when he was transferred to sexual assault, he had to go to sexual assault training because it requires special knowledge to deal with that specific class of cases. And as the district attorney, we will make sure that our lawyers continue to receive the training to make them effective prosecutors representing victims of sexual assault. And we also led the nation in testing sexual assault kits and rape kits.
Thank you very much. Next up, I believe Ellis has a question, and we'll be starting with Jimmie this round.
Okay. Thank you, Evan, and thank all the candidates for coming to the Tri-Valley Dems. A few months back, the Tri-Valley Dems and then the Alameda County Central Committee, Contra Costa Central Committee, and several other Democratic clubs passed a resolution that said that corporate executives who put profit before health, safety, privacy, or the environment shall be subject to criminal penalties. And it was passed in all of those venues unanimously, but I haven't been able to get an elected official to champion this. I've been told it's a little bit too broad. I can't seem to get Rob Bonta's attention, although I've spoken to him about it. I'm just wondering, as a lawyer, what's your opinion of getting legislation like that? And would you like to see it as a tool in your toolbox to prosecute corporate criminals, people who peddle opioids, unsafe vehicles, open up bank accounts at Wells Fargo, unbeknownst to the people who did it, who they did it to, who do these harms and get away with it? What would you do about that? And would you like to see that kind of law? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would like to see that type of law. I think that, you know, the criminal justice system is always evolving and laws change. There's laws on the books right now that weren't on the books 5-10 years ago. We are more aware of certain crimes, like human trafficking was not, when I tried the first 2 human trafficking cases 10 years ago, there was no human trafficking unit, and it wasn't even on the books. We actually had to write an actual jury instruction. So you're right. Most of the time, government officials are afraid to frame new laws because they aren't really prepared for how specific you need to be. But when we talk about the environment, when we talk about anything that's unsafe, if it's knowingly put out there, if you knowingly put out a product that is harmful to the environment or harmful to a human being, there should be laws and there should be regulations that are criminal penalties that can be enforced on corporations and any individual who takes advantage of the situation.
Thank you. And next up would be Seth.
I'm not getting any more feedback, am I? All right, seeing that. Okay, thank you so much. So with regard to this question, I can tell you that I worked on a law banning ghost guns and ghost gun kits in the city of Oakland. And why that's important and why it's relevant to this question is because most of those guns are mailed into the city of Oakland by organizations like Polymer 80, for example, out of Nevada. And so it's a gun that is 80% complete, and it comes with all of the tools that you need to do to put the gun together to make a working firearm. And so it's called a ghost gun kit. and you don't need an age to be able to buy this online. You don't need a background check. You don't need anything. You can literally just pay some money on the website and they will send you a ghost gun kit. That is now banned in the city of Oakland. And the reason why that's important to this question, the city of Oakland can now level both criminal charges and civil violation charges against Polymer 80 itself and any organization that mails ghost guns into the city of Oakland. That's the exact kind of work that I brought to the city of Oakland, and that's what I want to bring to Alameda County. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And next would be Terry.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Goldberg, that's a great question. And so I know the question says, are we in favor of laws that hold corporations responsible? When you look at our Consumer and Environmental Protection Division, the Alameda County Division of Consumer and Environmental Protection is one of the gold standards in the state of California. They handle an enormous amount of variety of cases where we are holding corporations responsible. I'll give you one quick example. We have inspectors who do what we call dumpster dives. They dive into the dumpsters wearing the hazmat suits to make sure that Target, Kaiser, whether Kaiser is properly throwing away their biohazardous material, whether certain materials that come with certain wrappings when they arrive at Target, and they're also supposed to be disposed of in a biohazardous manner. And in both of those cases, we filed consumer fraud lawsuits against both Kaiser and Target for the improper disposal of biohazardous material. So we are looking at corporations from top to bottom to make sure that they are adhering to the law and that they are not doing anything that is going to cause hazard or harm to the community. And we have more district attorneys' offices across the state that join with the Alameda County Consumer and Environmental Protection, including the Attorney General, in many of our lawsuits filed against corporations. So we are in the forefront.
Thank you very much. And lastly will be Pamela.
Yes, thank you, Ellis, for the question and for the concept, because it is long overdue. As you have alluded to, it's very difficult to get legislators to actually focus on things that affect the lives of everyday people when corporations are in fact engaged in putting profits before people. I have personally been involved in a number of lawsuits against major corporations, local corporations, and representing whistleblowers who in fact have blown a whistle and said that they were aware of activities by the corporation that in fact impacted public safety and imperiled not only the employees, but the public as in general, and was able to successfully resolve one of those cases in 2020, and am currently involved in one right now in the federal court. And so these cases can have been done traditionally civilly. The Alameda County DA's office has been very slow to prosecute corporations. Most currently, I live in East Oakland, and for example, the Attorney General recently filed a lawsuit against ABI Foundry, which has been polluting our environment for decades. And the district attorney's office has enjoyed a partnership relationship with that company. So we have to break that and begin to hold corporations accountable and to work with our legislators so that they understand the value of the kind of laws that you're talking about and enforce the laws that are already on the book. Too often, I'm sorry, Evan, I'm not seeing your hand, but I do civil cases that have criminal penalties, and I don't see the DA's office involved at all. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And thank you, Alice, for the question. I want to ask a quick question from chat, actually, to the candidates. And so this question came from one of our members. It is, how will you limit the unlawful use of technology that disproportionately misidentifies Black people and stacks the deck against anyone with digital recordings such as rings. And we will start with Seth on this question.
Hold up a quick second, Evan. I'm getting a lot of feedback again. So just a reminder, anybody has their phone unmuted, it will get feedback. Thank you. Okay, it's gone now.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
So how will you limit the unlawful use of technology that disproportionately misidentifies Black people and stacks the deck against anyone with digital recordings such as rings? And Seth.
So that question, as I understand it, has to do with facial recognition technology. And we absolutely need to halt any use of facial recognition technology that is inaccurate and inaccurately suggests either probable cause or some other type of standard that somebody has done something that hasn't. That technology is, for lack of a better word, racist, and we need to stop it. In addition to that, we need to fight all racist policies in the criminal justice system, from Emmett Till to Oscar Grant to Mario Gonzalez. The system has failed our communities. Black men are incarcerated in state prisons at a rate 10 times the rate of white men. Asian hate crimes have increased by 107% in California. We need to publish reports about the disparities at arrest, intake, and outcomes by charge. We need to create a task force to develop policies to eliminate any disparities in case charging. We need to recruit at historically Black colleges and universities, improve policies regarding bias and discrimination, and we need to lead the fight against hate crimes by seeking felony charges for hate-motivated crime. We need to end Asian hate and end hate against LGBT community. We need to do all of those things as the district attorney's office continues to fight new technology and make sure that we remain safe and just for everyone.
Thank you. Next is Terry. Terry, you're still muted.
Am I unmuted? Okay. So the reality is that today we actually see very few cases that are coming through the system based on the technological identifications. And really, the bigger issue when it comes to identifications is looking at the charging of cases that occur and making sure that the race of the person is less of an issue for the charging DAs, and where implicit bias may be able to find its way into the charging decision. Those are really the areas that we're really trying to have some impact and making sure that we have a level playing field when we're looking at the cases that are coming through the system. But when it comes to the new technology, of course, the reason you do not see many of those cases come through the system is because it hasn't been shown that the technology is objective in the execution of the technology. So that's, and at this point, unless it's technology that shows us that it's objective and that it's reliable, then you won't see a lot of cases being charged based on that technology.
Thank you. Next is Pamela.
Yeah, unfortunately, the criminal justice system has a long legacy of using flawed technology to racially profile and ultimately incarcerate Black and brown people, particularly Black men. Many people in our community, as we all know, have these ring machines on our doors and utilize them and some people use it as a convenient tool. Others would think that it provides some type of particular manner of crime fighting, and it really does not do that at all. And in fact, we have far too many instances in our criminal justice system where, beyond the use of that kind of technology, where essentially Black men and women at this point are racially profiled and actually information is presented for their prosecution that is flawed. And so the problem that we have to deal with is, how do we address deputies and police officers who are willing to use the system for their own means in order to secure convictions without regard to whether or not the person is innocent? That's the greatest danger that we face in the Alameda County criminal justice system.
Thank you. And then last would be Jimmie.
Well, as I kind of reviewed the question, I did my lawyer thing and I started thinking about the penal code, and is there actually a law that criminalizes the use of this type of likeness? There actually isn't at this point. So I think as a DA, you need to lobby the legislature to create a law that protects people and protects their images from being manipulated. The closest thing I could come to was identity theft, which is a specific law that requires some type of damage, usually monetary. What I can tell you, what we need to do is that we must, when there's laws on the book, we must prosecute those laws at the highest extent that we can. And when we find that there's damage to someone's likeness, as we're talking about here, we need to lobby the legislature to create laws so that we are protecting people. We know that the criminal justice system is pretty archaic and slow. So as district attorney, I would make it a point to, when I find that there's damage or someone is being damaged in a way, I will lobby our legislature to create laws that can be enforced.
Thank you very much. Next is a question is Helen. And the first answer will be Terry.
Hi. Okay. If there's a death with possible law enforcement involvement in Santa Rita or elsewhere, would you still support the sheriff making the ultimate decision as the case progresses? And as background, in San Joaquin Valley, San Joaquin County, there was a case in which the sheriff overrode the forensic scientists when they felt the deputies had some responsibility. The two coroners resigned and the sheriff was not elected. So anyway, what would you do? Would you support the sheriff making the decision?
I think the current system we have is, when the sheriff's department finds an inmate has expired in a cell, an investigation is done by the sheriff's department, of course, but then the coroner's office comes in and recovers the body and takes the body to the coroner's office. And really, in a lot of cases, you don't really know what you have until the autopsy is done. And then once the autopsy protocols are done, that's when you can really look and see, what do we have here? And then in that case, we would also have an officer involved, shooting team, to also review the case. And so you have an objective third party of reviewing the conclusions that the sheriff's department came to. So I think that the current system, as it exists, the organization that conducts, or the institution that conducts the autopsy protocols in Alameda County, has a long history of excellent work. And it's very reliable, and in most cases you can count on it. And in Alameda County, I don't see any situation where the experts have conducted an autopsy and the sheriff disagrees with their conclusions and they change their decision on the autopsy. That's never happened, and I don't see that happening. So I think that the current system has the proper checks and balances, because at the end of the day, the autopsy is being conducted by licensed medical pathologists.
Thank you. Next answer will be Pamela.
Thank you, Helen, for the question. I must tell you that the example you use has in fact happened in Alameda County. It's a great tragedy, and it involves the death of Jacob Bauer, whose father is on this line. And I'm so glad that he put it in the chat. Mr. Wiley is absolutely incorrect. The pathologist who ruled and gave an opinion on Jacob Bauer's death was overruled by the sheriff, and that person resigned. And so the contract that the sheriff has, he controls the outcome of the coroner's findings, and it's a conflict of interest. And you need to look no further than the fact that the district attorney's office has never prosecuted a deputy sheriff in connection with a death, an in custody death at the Santa Rita County Jail. And our jail is considered one of the most dangerous places to be in Alameda County. And so we have a significant problem with a sheriff who is out of control, with a district attorney's office that provides no accountability or oversight over Santa Rita County Jail. And what we do here, if we continue to allow this kind of mismanagement to continue, it matters. Santa Rita County Jail is the 5th largest facility in the country and the 3rd largest jail in California. And so when we have a situation where our sheriff is allowed to be the sole arbiter of what happens to people there without effective oversight by the DAs, we are definitely undermining public safety and doing a grave disservice to this community.
Thank you. Next will be Jimmie.
I've had participated in investigations of in custody deaths and deaths by police officers. What I can tell you as it relates to the sheriff's department, it's the appearance of impropriety that I think the question is asking. One of the reasons why that is because the coroner is a part of the sheriff's department. So the sheriff is actually investigating, the sheriff's investigator is actually investigating, the coroner is actually investigating its own member. I think that cases where they happen in Santa Rita and they happen by the hands of a sheriff's deputy could be deferred, sent to the attorney general to do the investigation. There's a new law in the books now that relates to officer-involved shootings, that when an unarmed person is killed by a police officer, that case is referred to the attorney general, and the attorney general can take the case from the district attorney and make the ultimate decision on whether or not it was lawful.
Thank you. And lastly will be Seth.
Thank you, Helen, so much for this question. You're 100% right. This is a huge problem. It's ridiculous that the coroner is under the sheriff and has to investigate and make decisions about the death of a person and is being paid by potentially the same person that caused that death. I mean, that's an inherent conflict of interest, and it cannot stand. It's a relatively simple fix. So right now, the coroner's office is under the sheriff. The way to do that is just move it out from the sheriff and make it independent. So for example, in many counties like San Francisco, there's a medical examiner that it's a complete and total separate department from the sheriff. From the DA, they're totally separate organization and entity. So they get paid by the people of the county, not by the sheriff. So that will directly solve that problem that we currently have and that we have had under this administration that seems to think that it's okay when it's obviously not. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I move on to our next question, we're reaching the end of our allotted time, so I want to ask for the members and the candidates both. We have 3 hands up right now. If we go through these questions, we'll probably wrap up a little closer to 8:30 with the final statements. which means also for our club business, we will likely go a little bit past 9 for this meeting. So first of the candidates, are you okay with staying for the additional time?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for our members, to make sure I'm respectful to you as well, is it okay for some of the business that we have to do afterwards for this meeting to carry on a little bit long? Okay.
Yes.
Then I'm going to ask that no new questions queue up in the line. So the three hands we have up, Joanne, Creighton, and Sean are going to be the last 3 questions, and then we'll do closing statements. So the candidates, try to stick to short answers as best as you can. And Joanne, take it away. And the first to answer for this question will be Pamela.
Thank you. If you become DA, how would you reduce the backlog of rape kits that have not been fully processed?
I'm making it a priority, number one, and addressing each department directly. I actually am the only candidate in the race that has both represented police officers and sued police officers. And so I'm very familiar with their processes and their chain of command and the challenges that they face. And so for me, I will work with each department. I'm totally comfortable working with the departments to make sure that we catalog the backlog, that we are clear about how long these things have been in their possession and what stage they're at, and what are the next steps to make sure that we get them through. I'm very good at setting goals and benchmarks and creating processes to actually get things through. That's what you have to do as a trial lawyer, is to make sure that you have a deadline and that you've got to meet that deadline. And you've got to determine from the beginning, what steps have to be done and how much longer is it going to take you to get something done. And so that will be a priority for me, because women should not be left hanging. And it's really a danger to public safety when we allow people who have in fact violated someone in the most horrible way to actually be walking around as if it never happened. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Jimmie.
So right now, there is no backlog in Alameda County of rape kits. In fact, the district attorney's office is one thing that Nancy O'Malley did, assigned a deputy DA and one of our inspectors to look at the rape kits in the county to see if there was a backlog. She actually received a grant for that purpose, and there wasn't a backlog. What we do have a backlog of is sexual assault cases and child sexual assault cases. We are right now in just Dublin alone, this is the other half of the county, there is 2,500 pending felonies and only 6 deputy DAs handling those cases. Of those 6, only 2 have experience of over 5 years. That is unacceptable. If we are going to treat victims with respect and dignity, we have to put more resources into our sexual assault cases and into our felony trial units.
Thank you. And next is Seth. Next is Seth.
So in this particular question, I agree with Mr. Wilson exactly that resources is the answer. And that's where we need to focus. And going after grants is also the answer. We need a comprehensive understanding of the backlog data to be able to best understand where the system is falling down and where we need to apply new policies to address these issues. For example, just last month, the Oakland City Council voted to accept a Department of Justice grant of over $365,000 to address the DNA backlog at the Oakland Police Department. And then in that same meeting, the city council accepted a grant of $68,000 from the California Department of Justice for additional money for the police department to be able to test the rape kits that the Oakland Police Department has. So I completely, we need resources and we need to prioritize this particular thing to make sure that all victims have their day in court and everybody knows that when they have an opportunity that they will get their day in court and the DA's office will fight to make sure that they are safe. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly will be Terry.
Yes. Well, Nancy O'Malley has been the nation's leader on the testing of rape kits. Our office took multiple trips back to Washington, D.C. in order to get the Department of Justice on board and supporting the testing of the backlog of rape kits, not only in Alameda County, not only in California, but across the country. And it was one of the things that we addressed. And so that today we have no backlog of rape kits in Alameda County. And it's a ongoing example of the leadership that we've taken on a lot of these different issues. When Mr. Wilson talks about the 2,500 case backlog, what Mr. Wilson doesn't understand is that the backlog of cases is a result of the pandemic. We meet on a bi-weekly basis, what's called the Justice Partners meeting, where the judges, the public defenders, the DAs, the court-appointed attorneys, we all meet to address the backlogs that exist in Alameda County. And these are the types of meetings that are going on across the country because the pandemic has slowed the justice system to an absolute crawl. Right now in Alameda County, they are trying to hire court clerks because they are down 100 court clerks in Alameda County. And so we don't even have enough clerks to process all of the cases that are coming through the system. So when he says there's 2,500 cases, that's what happens when you have a pandemic and the criminal justice system slows down and we can't process the cases.
Thank you very much. Next up is a question from Creighton, and the first to answer will be Jimmie.
Good evening. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Creighton Davis, and I'm the chair of Oakland's Community Policing Advisory Board, as well as an attorney. So I am really enjoying this conversation this evening. Thank you to the TriValley Dems for putting it on. So the Community Policing Advisory Board has seen a chilling effect with the term community policing on community engagement and partnership because of the negative connotations of the term community policing. We have adopted, as a result, a much broader vision that's focused on community engagement and neighborhood empowerment for our communities. So I'd like to ask all the candidates a question about restorative justice and diversionary programs as an alternative to traditional models of enforcement and incarceration. What specific restorative justice models, programs, or responses have you seen implemented that are successful? Or what restorative justice models, programs, and ideas do you think are appropriate to address the harms that we are seeing in our blocks and neighborhoods? Thank you.
And Jimmie, would you like to
Mr. Davis, you're right down my alley. I'm actually right now doing community policing training for several of the police departments around the county. We did training with the Hayward police officers, the San Leandro police officers. We've done training with the Bar Police, and I'm currently doing training with the Alameda Police. What's really important when we talk about community policing, we're talking about engaging young men to where the police get to know that they're being involved in the community instead of just seeing people as just objects or not seeing them as individuals. when we talk about diversion programs, the thing that I want to see is more a community-based diversion program where we're engaging the community with young people. I've seen programs throughout the country where that type of program has worked because DA offices are not good in in the way they implement diversion. I can tell you that the Alameda County District Attorney's Office is not doing a good job in diversion, and I think we need a community-based diversion program.
Thank you. Next will be Seth.
So I'll talk about two things. One, to specifically answer your question, the Ella Baker Center published a report last year about reforming youth justice and described a number of different restorative justice programs here in the Bay Area that work. And by work, what I mean is recidivism goes down, specifically in youth restorative justice programs. Youth that participate in those programs are much less likely to be arrested and commit crimes in the future. So we know that that stuff works. Speaking of that report, the Ella Baker Center also noted that youth of color make up 100% of those held in Camp Sweeney and about 92% of those held in juvenile hall. So these restorative justice programs are essential and need to expand here to Alameda County. In addition to that, we need to expand access to all alternative courts and diversion programs. And the injustice report by the ACLU said, hey, you know what? There's of the 55,000 misdemeanors charged between 2017 and 2018, fewer than 2,000 of those people participated in diversion programs here in Alameda County. So we need to expand diversion programs and alternative court programs to include neighborhood courts and community courts and give people access to these programs to be able to give them an opportunity to be successful, give them cognitive abilities and emotional intelligence to be able to address the situations that they're in so they don't make the same decision that they made last time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Terry.
Yes. Hi, Creighton. Good to see you. I think there's a couple of things. One, I think that communication between the district attorney's office and the NCPCs that Creighton is a part of is very, very important. And as Creighton knows that as a district attorney, I've met with his NCPC and a number of NCPCs in Oakland where we discuss some of the issues that they're having in their communities. And but on the specific question, Alameda County has had we've been using restorative justice in the juvenile system since 2013 when I took over the juvenile system. We signed a contract with Community Works, which is one of the preeminent organizations that conducts the restorative justice sessions. And they conducted all of the restorative justice sessions for our juveniles in Alameda County. Secondly, we have alternatives. Mr. Wilson says that we don't do a good job of alternatives to incarceration. We not only created the CARES program, which is a new program that gives law enforcement an alternative to taking someone to jail and instead taking them to the CARES program if they're having a mental health episode. And this is where they get access to treatment. We find them a bed, and the county was so impressed with the program, they've asked that $2 million be found to set up 2 new CARES programs in the south part of the county. And I know I'm going a little long, but let me just read to you the different alternatives to incarceration that we have in Alameda County. We have the North County Drug Court, the East County Drug Court, the Veterans Court and Military Diversion, the Behavioral Health Court, Mentor Diversion, Early Intervention Court, Reentry Court, Misdemeanor Pre-Charging Diversion, Clean Slate, where we help people clear their records, Homeless and Caring Court, Propositions 47 and 64, resentencing. We have a number of alternatives to incarceration that we currently employ in Alameda County.
Thank you.
And that's why we were able to drop the incarceration rates of juveniles 70% between 2013 and 2017 because of the alternatives to incarceration.
Thank you for that. Next is Pamela, or last is Pamela.
Sure, thank you. And good to see you, Creighton. In 2009, I was privileged to support my dear friend Fania Davis, who founded Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth, which is the premier program for restorative justice that was used both in the Alameda County court system and the Oakland Unified School District. And I've been endorsed by both Fania and her co-founder, Nancy J. Nadell, former Oakland City Councilwoman. So restorative justice is at the heart of what we want to bring to the transformation inside the Alameda County system. And that principle and the foundation principles of our joy is the basis of the San Francisco Neighborhood Courts Program. The Neighborhood Courts Program that's been used successfully in Philadelphia, which is also a model. The Seattle has a program called LEAD, the Law Enforcement Assistant Diversion Program, which allows law enforcement and the district attorney's office to use collaborative courts and to divert people without putting them into the criminal justice system. I've also worked with the founder and the designer of the San Francisco Neighborhood Courts Program, and we're very excited to be able to bring that to Alameda County. And lastly, I want to say New York City has pioneered domestic violence programs, which we really need to really transform in Alameda County, because that remains a huge problem here. And finally, the Urban Peace Movement and the East Bay Community Law Center have given Alameda County's alternative courts program basically a failing grade, and found that less than 1% of all the cases have been referred through those programs, that the criteria is far too stringent, and that the outcomes are not favorable for people who are allowed to go there, because either there's no language access, there's a lot of linguistic injustice for those who don't speak English. There's no guarantee that you're going to get somebody that can help you get through the program. And so those courts are failing, and that's a known documented fact.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to move to our last question, which is going to be from Sean, and the first answer will be Seth.
Thank you, Evan. I just wanted to ask, recently well, across the county, but in Tri-Valley, we've been seeing a lot of, rise in crime. So I just wanted to know, how do you specifically plan to handle violent crime in Alameda County?
Thank you, Sean, for the question. I think that this is the thing that the DA's office needs to make its #1 priority, is to focus on violent crime. Violent crime is the thing that makes it impossible for parents to take their children to the park. I just was having a lunch with a friend of mine. She explained to me that when she walks to her car, she has her purse, and then she takes her car keys out of her purse and she puts them in her pocket because she is afraid that she is going to get robbed. And I've talked to a number of business owners that are also fearful of robberies and being robbed in their stores and in their homes. And so this is the thing that we need to focus on. My plan to do that is to do 3 things. 1, ensure prosecutors have the resources that they need to prosecute violent crimes. We need to be able to prioritize these violent crimes and give prosecutors, investigators, legal secretaries, and paralegals the resources that they need to be able to be successful. 2, we need to prioritize cases involving gun violence. There was 134 murders in the city of Oakland alone, and Bay Area freeways have the shootings on Bay Area freeways have more than tripled in the past 3 years. And half of those have occurred in one county, Alameda County. So we need to focus on gun violence. And finally, we need to support common sense gun safety laws. We need to ban ghost guns, as we've done in the city of Oakland, and we need to expand background checks. If we do those things, gun violence and crime will go down, and we need to make sure, again, that we focus on violent crime. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Terry.
Thank you, Evan. Well, I agree with Seth on that answer. I looked around the country and I looked at places like Chicago, Philadelphia, that are suffering just unbelievable homicide rates. And I looked at the offices that were most effectively dealing with violent crime. And the office that I was drawn to was the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and their Crime Strategies Unit, which is a data-driven, intelligence-driven unit that focuses on the small number of individuals that drive probably 80 to 90% of the violent crime on the island of Manhattan. And we have a similar situation in Alameda County. We have about 1,700 individuals that drive 80% of the violent crime in the city of Oakland and throughout the county. And so by creating a new crime strategies unit that will be data-driven and intelligence-driven, partnered with the ceasefire division of the Oakland Police Department and other police agencies that have their units that focus on the violent offenders, we are going to give those individuals an opportunity to come in and bring their guns, and we are going to give them an opportunity to educate themselves. We're going to give them with some resources to try and get them a job. But if they refuse to turn their guns in and find a different path, then we're going to be focused, laser focused on those 1,700 individuals that are driving 80% of the violent crime in Alameda County. Now, I do know this when it comes to violent crime. I know that Ms. Price said that she's not going to prosecute any misdemeanors. And, you know, a lot of those misdemeanor crimes are segues to felony conduct.
Thank you. And next answer is Pamela.
Yeah, I don't know what Mr. Wiley is getting his information. I never said I'm not going to prosecute misdemeanor violent crimes or misdemeanor crimes at all. The National Institute of Justice has looked at the evidence-based analysis of violence in every community. And they found that where there are more guns, that's when you have more violence. They've also found that young people more often than not use guns as a way of safety because their own fear and basically of being the victim of violence is what leads them to get an illicit gun and then use that gun. And that's the two kinds of violence that are most common in our communities are gun violence between young people, as well as domestic violence. And so those are the things that we have to prioritize. There's street violence, yes, but most violence occurs between people who know each other. And the use of a gun is something that happens when guns are prevalent in the community. And so as the next district attorney, I will focus on stemming the flow of guns, particularly the overwhelming flow of ghost guns into our community, as well as addressing young people where they are and creating opportunities for conversations with them to let them know that you don't have to have a gun to feel safe in your own community. Too often, a young person and I've seen this representing kids, that they pick up a gun, they do it for their own safety, they use the gun because it's there. And too often in domestic violence situations, people use guns because it's there. And so that's the focus. We've got to use evidence-based science and the data to focus on how do we stop the proliferation of violence in our communities. Thank you. I'm sorry, Evan.
Okay, thank you. And last will be Jimmie.
Well, I can tell you this. There is no crime suppression unit currently in the district attorney's office. Almost 2 years ago, Nancy O'Malley got rid of her gang unit. When Mr. Wiley says 1,700 people are responsible for most of the violent crime in the community, I don't know where he gets that information from. What we know is that violent crime is on the rise, and the district attorney's office has no response to it. And in fact, they have made it actually worse. To actually reduce crime, we have to hold people accountable. That's where it comes down to. When there's violent crime, we have to hold people accountable. Ceasefire will not work if there's no gang unit. But when I was involved in ceasefire, I was also involved with the gang unit. We knew who the gang members were. That's how we got them to put down their guns. We were able to say, this person belongs to this gang, he's a low-level offender. We're going to attack that person to get that person to put down their guns. When you don't have a crime suppression unit whatsoever in your office, you're just reactionary. You're not proactive.
Thank you. And so I would like to thank all of the candidates, and we're going to go into a final statement from everyone. I'll be putting in links as well to everyone's campaign sites into the chat if anyone would like to donate, volunteer, or support the candidates. And then we'll talk about the voting for endorsement after we've wrapped up. And so we're going to start with Terry. Please try to keep your closing statements brief, less than 2 minutes.
Well, you know, when I started, I told you that our campaign is about safety and justice. And we're really looking for a system of justice that is fair to everyone, but that is also protecting everyone. You know, when we look at the lower level offenses where we can find alternatives by focusing on the origins of some of these crimes, by looking at substance abuse, mental illness, and poverty that drives many of the crimes at the lower level. The problem with some of the programs that we have that address those alternatives is there is an insufficient amount of accountability baked into the system. And so under my leadership, I want to continue those programs to continue to find alternatives to incarceration for some of the low-level offenses. But there's got to be sufficient accountability baked into the system for those programs to be effective. And I do, the stats that I gave you, that 1,700 individuals are driving about 80% of the violent crime, comes from an absolutely reliable resource that gave us those numbers. And that's where the focus is, because those are the individuals that are driving the majority of the crime, and they are the focus of ceasefire, those individuals at both. And with the juveniles, you have the juveniles that are also becoming gang involved, and we've got to try and reach those juveniles to get them out of the gangs so that they are not engaging in some of the violent conduct that you see with the adult gangbangers that are causing havoc in the community. And I just think it's very, very important to focus in on those individuals and bring the proper resources to our criminal division to handle those individuals. And finally, I'm the candidate with the experience. I'm the candidate with the ideas of where I want to take the district attorney's office. I'm the candidate that is proven. I've been endorsed by the leading civil rights leaders of this country because they've evaluated my platform, but more importantly, they've seen what I've stood for over the last 32 years of my career. And that's what's behind those endorsements. And so I ask for the endorsement of the TriValley Democratic Club, and I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Next, with closing statements is Pamela.
Thank you, TriValley Dems, for having us again. We need bold new leadership in the district attorney's office, and it's long overdue. I've had a great legal career in Alameda County. I'm one of the pioneers of Title IX in this country, which opened doors for women in education since 1977. Between 1999 and 2015, I bought and sold 2 office buildings in downtown Oakland. I've been honored by the California State Legislature as a champion of justice, a social justice advocate, and Woman of the Year for Assembly District 18. I have 3 certificates of congressional recognition by Congresswoman Barbara Lee and 1 from Congressman Mark DeSalle. And in 2002, I was named California Lawyer of the Year for Employment. I received those honors because I have done the work, because I have served this community. I have been endorsed by Danny Glover and Angela Davis and the Real Justice PAC, as well as our Revolution East Bay and a number of progressive organizations. Smart Justice is working on our behalf. And we expect that it's going to be a tough race. So I appreciate that you all are taking the time to listen to us. In addition to being an attorney, I've been an educator. I've trained police departments. I've worked in the nonprofit world. I'm not taking money from police associations, and we're a corporate-free, people-powered campaign. We would love to have your endorsement and for you to join us on this journey. It is a great transformation of Alameda County that needs to happen. And the question before you is, do you really believe that someone who has profited, participated, and prospered in a broken system is really the one who can fix it? You have folks before you today that have been in this system and they've been doing just fine. They've been promoted and they've made their living in that way. I've made my living representing everyday people and fighting for justice and holding police officers and public institutions and private institutions accountable. I have 30 years experience solving problems, representing victims and survivors of crime, and coming up with innovative ways to address the problems that we now face. I've been in this community for 40 years, and I'm really embraced by Alameda County, and I'm prepared to serve at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next up is Jimmie.
You know, I started my opening statement talking about safety and how I believe safety is a civil right. I believe that because this is my community. This is where I've lived for 36 years. I work in this community. My wife works in this community. I raised my 3 kids in this community. I went to school at Laney College at night while I was a plumber, and I graduated from UC Berkeley with honors. I came into the DA's office. I want to say that my moral compass was set. I knew what we needed to be doing, and I expected us to do that. What I have learned is that we aren't reaching our mandate. We aren't reaching our goals. Our principles are lost. What I believe is that we need to concentrate on public safety. We have to get guns off the street. We have to address our youth and get them out of the cycle of violence. We have to address trauma. We have to get our gang unit back in place so businesses can thrive. I've spoken to business leaders, to marijuana businesses who they're under attack weekly by armed robbers with AK-47s and high-powered rifles. The DA's office isn't doing anything to curb that violence, and that is unacceptable. I can tell you one thing, as a 17-year veteran of the DA's office, I know how to reduce violence in our community. I don't have to go to another jurisdiction to learn how to do it because I've been doing it my entire career. Ladies and gentlemen, I am running for district attorney because I want you to feel safe. I want your family to feel safe, and I also want your neighbors to feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to wrap it all up for us, Seth.
Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm the best candidate to change this office and to be your next district attorney. My diverse lived experiences as a proven prosecutor, decorated veteran, public school teacher, and policy leader stand out and give me a distinct understanding of the district attorney's office and the criminal justice system. From a voter's perspective, there's a fairly large middle lane for reasonable, thoughtful, smart change. We need to join the wave of change that is happening across the country, whether it's Manhattan, Chicago, Philadelphia, or Portland, Oregon. Make no mistake, change is necessary. The system is broken, and the DA's office is a part of that system. My strategic goals: to focus resources on violent crime, to expand alternative courts and diversion, and to lead outside of the courtroom to bring laws like banning ghost guns and ghost gun kits to the entire county will keep us safe and reduce crime. Please go to SethSteward4DA.com for additional information, to sign up for a house sign, to meet and greet, or to donate to our campaign. Thank you for your consideration, for allowing me into your home, and to have a conversation about criminal justice here in Alameda County. Thank you, TriValley Dems. I really appreciate the time. My name is Seth Steward, and I humbly ask you for your endorsement. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to wrap up by saying that this is such a wonderful set of candidates. Again, this is going to be a very difficult vote for me. I think for many, it's going to be a very challenging vote on who to endorse. All of you did wonderfully. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you so much for spending time with us and running a little late with us, but I think it was very informative. This was wonderful for me, at least. So I hope it was for you as well, and for all of our members. This is recorded, so we will give you all a copy of it as soon as it's posted as well, so you can use that. I posted links to all of the different sites, everyone's sites. When we're voting, when we're supporting, the club will be supporting one candidate, hopefully. And after that, you all should also, as well as members of the Democratic Club and out here in the East County and the Tri-Valley, really should be working with these different candidates to try to support whichever one you like the best as well. All of them could use your support, whether it's as volunteers, whether it's money, phone banking, connecting them with other people. It is always a great service to candidates, so please do support them. The ballots should have been mailed to everyone who is a member. Again, this helps a little bit with us tracking. If there's any issues, check to make sure it didn't go to your spam folder. It should have come from the TriValley Dems Media at gmail.com. If it is missing, you can send a direct message to the Tri-Valley Democratic Club secretary, Jackie.
Oh, so we may have
she should
gotten
be
the
able to-
ballot.
Actually, Evan, I just sent it out. It may show because I didn't want everybody to see everybody else's email. So you all are in the blind copy. It should come from TriValley Dems Media, as well as probably my home address, my email.
Us has just sent it out now.
Yeah, so what you'll get is a link. You click on the link, and if you're already logged into Google, it's going to probably default to your Google account. If you're not logged into Google, it should just take you into this link, and you're going to put in a valid email address. It doesn't have to be a Google account, just any valid email. But if you are logged into Google, like I said, it's going to try to default to that. You put in your name, as well as choose who you are going to endorse. And since our bylaws changed last month, we can only endorse one candidate. You have a choice to choose one of the candidates or to abstain. And you will notice that different people get this in different order. You may see the abstain right in the middle, and the form is automatically sorting it in different orders for every different person. So there's no one candidate that gets gets an edge by being first. Once you fill that out, it's going to be automatic. If you have only one email address, let's say Marisol, I think we only had you with one email address for you and your daughter. So you can submit that form twice, just fill it out with two different names. You can use the same email address, but just make sure if you fill it out for a second person that's in the club, that you use a different name when you submit the form a second time. If there is any club member that did not receive this email and they are current on their dues, remember you have to be current on your dues in order to vote. Let me know if you did not receive that. I tried to scrub against everybody on the call tonight. So if you are a club member, but you haven't paid your dues, you may not have got an invitation. If you did pay your dues and you think you should be able to vote tonight, please let me know, hit me up in chat or raise your hand and we'll get you fixed up. So,
Point of order.
Pardon me? Yes, Evan.
Point of
or
order.
Alice. Point of order.
We did not change this part of the bylaws last month.
The part of the bylaw, what we said is that we could only vote for the number of seats that the position held open.
Right.
Prior to this, we would have allowed you to endorse every single one of these candidates tonight.
Did
That
we
changed.
actually make that change? My
Yes.
recollection is we
Yes,
didn't.
we did. In order to be in compliance with Alameda County and the state party bylaws, yes, we did. And we changed it, but we said we would revisit this and talk about it some more. But we did not want to get in trouble by being, having different bylaws than what the party is saying we should. So yeah, it was changed last month.
Thank you, Jackie, for that. And thank you for running our election as well. I know it's a lot of work, so I really appreciate that. So
we have 13 responses so far, so I'm going to leave this till the end of the meeting, and then I will close this question. So please only vote once, because I will audit that, and we'll give you a few more minutes to finish this up. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Just as a small point, Jackie, if you don't mind, can you leave it open possibly for like an hour or so after the meeting, just for, say, those of us who are running the meeting currently getting a chance to vote?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I just want to make sure that if I have the answer by the end of the meeting, I'd like to give it to the club if we have it. So.
Okay. And then I saw Christine was raising her hand.
Yes, I did not get the email, Jackie.
Christine Kanza?
Correct.
Okay, I saw you on there, but let me give you the direct link right now, make it easier, okay? Hold on.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
And then we have a couple of guests actually to present for the next two items. So I want again to say thank you to the candidates for coming out. If you'd like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you are more than welcome to, but I know you're all very busy, so don't feel pressured to stay. So thank you so much for being here. We will inform you as soon as we have the final results.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We enjoyed it.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Christine, do you have it now in the direct link? In the chat?
Hold on.
Should be, if you click on the chat button.
While you're working that out, I'm gonna just introduce our next guest. So Jackie, keep an eye on chat to see if anyone else needs it. If you can, while our guests are presenting, if you can try to use the chat feature to speak with Jackie, just ask for the link. And if there's any problems, hopefully you can sort that out that way, because it is already 10 minutes to 9 and we have two presenters and one business item to cover, or a couple business items to cover before we wrap up tonight. So with that, the first of our guest presenters is our friend from the Alameda County Central Committee, Igor. He is the current vice president, I believe, of the Central Committee. Is that correct?
Vice Chair, yes. Good to be with all of you.
Thank you. And he's going to be presenting on a couple of environmental issues. So I will turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you so much. And Evan, I'm so sorry to do this. I know I was prepping for a couple of items indeed. Can you just remind me, besides the solar issue, what was the other update?
Solar issue, and then I wasn't quite sure actually if you wanted to continue on with the Ellis Act reform, where that was out. So I put it in as an option.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, so AB 854, the Ellis reform bill, which unfortunately did not go to a vote. It was a 2-year bill, so it needed to be voted out of the House of Origin by January 31st. And kind of in a late breaking move, the authors felt that it would not have had the votes to go to the floor. So we're going to be trying again, either this year or next year. And there's a broad coalition working on that. So that's unfortunately the update on that, but we will keep fighting on. I wanted to thank you for first of all, what a tough act to follow on the tail end of this very illuminating candidate forum. And thank you so much to the TriValley Dam Club for hosting that. Y'all did a great job. I wanted to just fill you in on an issue that is impacting all of us, ratepayers and the state of California. So right now, there is a proposed decision that was issued by the California Public Utilities Commission that if it goes through, this decision is a near carbon copy of what investor-owned utilities like PG&E have proposed. If this goes through, it would impose a $57 a month charge on anyone that wants to put in rooftop solar on the roof of their house. It would also slash the export credit, and that is the amount of money that up until now, with the state of California, we are obviously nearing a climate catastrophe. So there is encouragement to not use all the energy that you produce. And that's why prior to now, if you were a solar owner and you didn't use up all the energy that you produce and you wanted to share some of it with your neighbors, you would be compensated for it. This proposal is to slash 80% of that compensation. And finally, it would impose, for anyone here who owns solar now, you probably purchased it with the understanding that the rules would apply to you for 20 years. And there's this part of the proposal claws that back to 15 years and changes the rules before you even got done, unfortunately, paying for your solar panel. So this is what this proposal would have the effect of doing. There was an analysis that showed that the amount of rooftop solar would decrease by 50%. It would also have the real possibility of cutting a good portion of 65,000 well-paying jobs, including local jobs in the rooftop solar sector, which prior to now has been one of California's fastest growing sectors in the renewable energy space, and one of the very few where you can provide for your family without having a college degree. So those jobs, people's livelihoods would be at risk. Now, that's not all. If you are a school, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a small business, if you're a farm, this would also impact you. And depending on how much solar you need to have and actually have, this would cost you an additional $1,200 a month. This is why, well, finally, as though that was not all, it would also negatively impact hundreds of thousands of tenants in multifamily housing that have virtual net energy metering now. And it's that virtual net energy metering that actually has been able to provide tenants like myself the same opportunity to be part of California's clean energy solution. That includes tens of thousands of affordable housing units through the Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing Program and others, which is why dozens of affordable housing nonprofits have sent a letter to the CPUC to not do this. So our simple ask is this, and I think there's a resolution before you that asks for this. Number one, no solar tax. This is not the time when we're already running the risk of not meeting the state's climate energy goals to begin with, to slam the brakes. This is not the time to do it. When the Biden administration itself has said that we need to double the amount of solar in the next 5 years and then double it again by 2030. Number two, no retroactive charges on those of you who have worked hard and scraped together hard-earned savings with the understanding that your solar system would pay for itself in 5 to 7 years. When under this proposal, that would go up to 20 years, which makes no economic sense for working class and middle class folks to be able to invest in solar. And number three, continue to make solar and storage more affordable and accessible to all, particularly those same working class and middle class folks, not less. There was a 2019 LBNL study. This is the last year for which we have a full year's worth of data that shows that that year, 2/3 of solar adopters had a household income of 150K or less. I'm in the Bay Area, like I think most of you are. That sounds pretty working class and middle class to me. But if that sounds like too much money, 42% of solar adopters that same year had household incomes of 100K or less. And my favorite stat is this: there were more solar adopters that year that made 50K or less as household income than solar adopters that made 250K or more. So these are the folks that I think we care about, and we would never want to do anything to put them in a position where someone has to choose between their energy bill and their mortgage. And so thank you so much for considering this. If you pass this resolution, you would be part of a broad coalition. I will put all these links in the chat right after I'm done speaking. And over 700 organizations and elected officials and community leaders from all over have already signed on to the same asks, including our very own amazing assembly member, Rebecca Bauer-Cahan. Barbara Lee, who always speaks for me, sent out a tweet in support of these asks. I will put that tweet in the chat shortly. And then finally, I just want to make it clear that even though the Alameda County Democratic Party and the California Democratic Party has endorsed a very similar resolution, I'm speaking tonight in my independent capacity. And I also wish to disclose that my employer is the California Solar and Storage Association. So I welcome your questions and thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you very much for bringing this to the club, Igor. I appreciate it. And I'll say that I am supportive of the many concepts that are presented. I do know that unfortunately, Steve Dunbar is not here today, but he sent you some comments and concerns, and I was hoping you could just address some of the concern about the long-term sustainability and kind of the conflict there of the concerns of the immediate problem versus the long-term ramifications of the continued subsidies.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. If you're referring to Stephen's comments, we have been in conversation this entire day. And so in a nutshell, I'm actually looking for the link to that report right now, and we'll be posting it shortly. There it is. There's actually a study that shows that continuing rooftop solar at the same pace as it has been allowed to grow thus far, in fact, saves $120 billion to ratepayers, whether or not they own solar over the next 30 years. So I'm putting in the chat one of the ways in which the utilities are claiming that there is a fictional cost shift. It is my position. It is the position of over 700 organizations and elected officials who've signed this on, that the cost shift doesn't exist except in the minds of the utility. In fact, utilities make a guaranteed 8 to 10% of profit a year based on transmission lines. That's their concern. There's a profit motive, distributed energy resources, just gives them a little bit less profit than they would otherwise get, but it's still more profit than they get today. Because the reality is, and I see Father Greg Bonato on this call. Look, we need both central solar and distributed energy, renewable solar. We need both of them in order to truly meet our climate action goals. I have fought to make sure that organizations like the Sierra Club are in support of both. I have fought for good jobs in the TriValley on central solar because we need both. We should not be fighting each other over these types of goals. And maybe I went a little bit further in answering this question, but I would, I think that's a good place to end that response.
No, thank you. So thorough and very much appreciated. So with that, I will turn it to the club. If there's any further questions, or if there are no further questions, I'm also open to a motion to support this resolution. Sean.
No question. I just wanted to reiterate that Assemblymember Bauer Cahan is very supportive of this resolution and efforts to save rooftop solar. She does believe that now is not the time to disincentivize financially rooftop solar, that we need an all-of-the-above approach if we're going to take on the existential crisis that is climate change. And with that, I would like to move that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Second. Okay, I believe we have a motion from Sean and a second from Ellis. So with that, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed? Say nay.
Aye. Nay.
I heard a nay from
Greg.
Greg. Any other nay votes? And any abstentions? All right, hearing that, it passes. So Jackie or Igor, we'll work together to make sure we get signed on properly for the club.
Thank you so much. everyone. And if you'd like to take action, I provided a few ways to do that in the chat. The most important one right now is to call the governor's office. And I included, make this your own. It's just a sample script and the numbers in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's anything you'd like me to send to members, if you can get that to me, such as the script or any other information, I'll send out a follow-up email. Next up, we have a presentation from Kelsey on the recent police shooting in Pleasanton and asking for some support for us. I had a little pause between the order of this was purposeful to give a little time between the DA presentation also. So I don't know if Pamela has anything to add as well, but Kelsey, take it away.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Kelsey. Many of you probably remember me. I was Vinnie Bacon's campaign manager when he ran for supervisor. And I became a member of your wonderful club back then. And so I've continued working in politics, and now I am managing Pamela's campaign along with Jeremy Schaefer. And we're here. I'm here today. I like to say I'm wearing all of my hats. I'm wearing my campaign manager hat, but I'm also wearing my hat as the chair of Fund Progressives in Fremont, Union City, and Newark. I'm also wearing my hat as an alternate member of the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee. And I'm also going to wear my hat as a former e-board and current ADEM delegate to the California Democratic Party when I speak to you about this. Pamela and I are reaching out to all of our pro-accountability allies in the Valley because we want to release a statement that is supported by a broad coalition of pro-accountability people in the Valley regarding the shooting done by Pleasanton Police Department last week. I can't share the KTVU article with you that has the video, but I assume most of you have seen the video. And so what I'm asking for support on, essentially in May of 2020, the Alameda County Democratic Party, of which I'm a member and Pamela is a member and many of us on this call are a member, we passed a resolution saying that we want the Attorney General of California to be investigating all deadly uses of force by police, and and even including especially when someone was unarmed. In the particular case in Pleasanton, while the person did have a knife, they were leaving their home, had not attacked or done anything yet, and they were fired upon and began to run and were ultimately killed. So we want to have a continuum of our hard work on the Central Committee and ask our fellow Democrats to join our statement calling on an investigation. I will, it's kind of long and I don't want to read it out loud and take up all of your guys' time, but Evan, did you provide it to the membership?
Yeah, it's on the agenda and I just posted a link in the chat. Since it came in a little late, it wasn't with our initial email though.
Yes, and I apologize for that. We were working really hard to finalize a statement. So as you can see, we definitely want to address that domestic violence is a large problem. And it's definitely one that's been growing with COVID as more and more people are at home together, as more and more people face economic hardships. However, constitutionally, we are all entitled to a jury of our peers to decide our guilt, and we are allowed to have a judicial system that decides what our punishment is. I think something we all like to say a lot is that police officers are not judge, juries, and executioners. They're public safety officials who need to respond to crises of all types. We are also saying that we do not like the press coverage of this particular shooting, and that we do not believe that the media coverage has been fair to what the situation actually was. So we would love to, we are reaching out to, I'm so sorry, first of all, I just got out of class. I had a much better speech prepared. But we are preparing, we've been reaching out to many of our allies. We've reached out to Genesis. We've reached out to the Southern Alameda County Progressive Democrats. We've reached out to the Coalition for Police Accountability. And we do plan, as the meetings and everyone's meetings that we can attend to ask them to sign on. We do plan to ask many in our community coalition to sign on in this support statement of support. I am here to answer any questions, and I believe Pamela stayed on as well. If there's anything you guys would like her to answer about this, but we are asking for your support as the local Democrats and to help us follow our continuum of hard work in the Democratic Party and stand up for our values and making sure that we're having fair investigations when police are involved in ending someone's life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I put a link in the chat for the letter in case anyone missed it on the agenda. And I know there are a few other people who might have some additional comments on this on the call. So I'm going to open up the floor if anyone has additional comments or questions. Pamela, would you like to take it first?
Sure. The Central Committee actually voted in May of 2020 that if there was an officer, the use of deadly force by a police officer or a law enforcement officer against an unarmed civilian, it would go to the California Attorney General for investigation. In late 2020, that became the law. The legislature actually passed that, and Attorney General Rob Bonta is in the process of setting up that unit to do those kinds of investigations. This situation doesn't fall exactly within the parameters of the resolution that we passed at the Central Committee, because that our resolution was broad, as Kelsey has pointed out. It was any use of deadly force by a police officer against a civilian. The law that passed limited it to unarmed civilians. This question arises out of Pleasanton, which is really obviously within your jurisdiction. And so we have come to you as the guardians of public safety in this community. It is an issue that arose out of domestic violence, and domestic violence is a serious problem in all of our communities. It affects everyone, and regardless of your race, your ethnic status, your socioeconomic status. And one of the things that we've learned in Alameda County, it's dramatically underreported. And the great fear that people have is that if I call the police, whether it's a question of mental illness or a mental health crisis or domestic violence, is my loved one going to end up dead? The majority of cases that involve domestic violence involve intimate partner violence or somebody who knows somebody else. And the last thing they want is for that person to end up dead. And in this case, there are at least 3 witnesses who have come forward and said that when the gentleman stepped out of the apartment door, he was not threatening, he was not aggressive, he was not running. And so it was concerning that the media would say he's running toward the police, or he's lunging, or he's attacking, because if you look at the video, that's not what it shows. And the witnesses say that's not what happened. And so as a lawyer, I'm very concerned, and as your next district attorney, obviously I am concerned about whether things are being presented accurately to the community, whether the media is representing things accurately, and whether the police are acting appropriately in a way that does not undermine public safety. And so that's the genesis of this. And there are a number of folks that are very, very concerned about this. And we thought that we would bring it to you all. And we presume that you would share that concern. And all we're really asking is that the matter be, will go to the city manager, the chief of police. Pleasanton has new leadership, and they're still trying to find their way. And so it's important that in that vacuum that the citizens step forward and ask that this matter go to the Attorney General.
Thank you. Okay, I see that John Bauer would like to say something. If you'd like to go next, go ahead. Make sure to unmute yourself. John, are you able to unmute? While John works on that, is there anyone else who would like to comment or has any questions I see Van has one.
Yeah, I'd like to know if the police report stipulated that the policeman was under threat.
As far as we know, there's no report yet. The city council has oversight over the police department, and they have not yet provided the information to the city council or finalized a report. All we've heard are the media reports, which were that he was aggressive and dangerous from some statements of the police officers' attorneys, and there was a police practices expert. But what the report actually says, we don't really know.
Has there been a FOIA request? Because it seems like that should be public record information.
Yeah, it hasn't happened yet because it's happened, I think, on Thursday. So, and they promised a response to the community, but it hasn't been forthcoming.
So is there a chance that a law could be written that stipulates that a policeman has to be under, some kind of reasonable man, act to be threatened?
Yes, the law does say that, actually. Secretary of State Shirley Weber's law says that, actually. The law changed in 2020, and that's one of the issues with officers, is that they have to understand they can only use deadly force to prevent in defense of a life. That is the new standard, and it's very different for police officers, and it's not clear that that standard was followed in this case.
Okay. Well, I'm in support of anything that brings more light to this issue and holds people accountable.
Thank you.
And I think John is unmuted at this point. If he can't say something, I can speak to that. But
Okay, so can you hear me now, I guess?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Yeah, a little technical difficulties there. So first off, let me just explain who I am. My name's John Bauer. Our son, Jacob Bauer, was killed by the Pleasanton police on August 1st of 2018. So our family's gone through this, 3 years of going through this. And in finality, our family settled with the city and the police department for a record settlement in the whole United States of $5.9 million, which is the largest settlement ever paid for the killing of a law enforcement person of a Caucasian. So I've lived this, it's very personal. And what I see of what happened last week is extremely disturbing. And I was hoping that the attitude of the Pleasanton police would change, instead of a stormtrooper attitude of, as reported, they had this person and they were in negotiation with him for 3 hours. And they decided after 3 hours, something happened. And I'll say this, as far as police reports, media reports, and things like that, in our case, things were not released to us for 18 months. And the initial press releases that were issued by the Pleasanton police were 100% lies. They described our son as throwing bottles and railies, threatening customers, and it turns out that it was 100% lies. And fortunately, federal judge Laurel Beeler saw through all these lies and allowed our case to go forward to a jury trial. And both parties, like I said, settled for $5.9 million, which was a record settlement in the case of a Caucasian death at the hands of law enforcement. So, I encourage that this party, this group, look for accountability. I'll also say this, is that I believe there was a state ballot measure that recently that I don't know if it passed or not, but that that the state district attorney would be involved in any death at the hands of law enforcement. And at a city council meeting, the city council takes positions on a number of ballot issues. And the police department stated that, no, we don't want the state district attorney coming in. You know, it's going to be too long for them. They came up with all sorts of excuses on why this was a bad proposition, because we don't want the state district attorney. We are totally capable of handling our own investigation. And I can tell you this, it's like I said, it's personal. Everything in that 468-page police report that they printed, you know, when they killed our son Jacob, was really a total justification of what they did. Our son was in a mental crisis. And as I stated before, Dr. Ferenc, who did the autopsy, in his deposition he took, he went into great detail about how Jacob died of mechanical asphyxiation. The Pleasanton police attacked our son, put him into a body wrap, and then cranked him over in that body wrap, you know, basically a straitjacket, into a position of over 30 degrees, which forced his diaphragm up into his lungs. And he died of cardiac asphyxiation within about 12 minutes. And Dr. Ferenc went into great detail about that. And as I stated in the chat, Dr. Ferenc resigned just before Sheriff Ahern released that official report that stated that Jacob died of meth overdose in his system. And we admit that there was meth found in his system, but a recreational amount is, you know, what has been described. So this is an important subject, and I hope this group would take the lead and move forward and look for an independent investigation, because we know what, if Pleasanton police are left to police themselves, we know what the result's going to be. They're going to come back and say, we were fully justified. We feared for the community. We feared for the life of other officers. We feared for the life of the officers. You know, I can tell you, I know what the final report is going to be. And I will say this, is that it took us 18 months to get that final report in our case. So I agree. I encourage you to support what Kelly is proposing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John, and thank you for sharing your story with us. I think it is something very important for the members to hear, and for anyone who listens in later to this meeting. Hopefully, they will listen to your story. So thank you for that. I see Sean has your hand up. Would you like to ask a question or a comment?
Yeah, more just a comment. I think that, well, I was very saddened to see the use of deadly force reports in the recent news. And, within our community, anytime use of deadly force is applied, I think it's a very sad thing, Now, that being said, personally, I don't feel like I have enough information to vote in support of this tonight. And I'm just speaking, for myself as an individual. I think I'd like to know a little bit more about the circumstances that are being presented in the investigation. This proposal is a very serious proposal to basically bypass all of the investigative process and refer it straight to the Attorney General. I think that, well, and one, I'm looking at this letter now, and it says here that, quote, police officers are supposed to use deadly force only when necessary to defend a human life. While we did do some major reforms to the use of force law, and we have the most progressive use of force law in California, as AB 392 states, or amended in 2020, I don't know. I need to better understand. I don't think this is wholly accurate. PCA 35A states that use of force authority conferred on police officers is serious responsibility. Deadly force should be used only when necessary. And use of force decisions are to be evaluated carefully and from a reasonable officer perspective. There's nothing in there that states that it's only necessary to defend a human life. So I just want to make sure that everything that we approve is factually accurate. So I'd like to ask that we table this this vote until we can evaluate it a little more deeply and have a better understanding of the circumstances. Finally, I'll just say that we have a very strong advocate within our club membership from a council member in Pleasanton who has been an outspoken advocate for police oversight and reform within her city and broadly throughout the state. And so I'd like to have a conversation as an elected official. I'd like to have a conversation with Council Member Testa and other colleagues to just better understand kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Just to clarify, was that a motion to delay, or would you like to wait till Councilmember Testa has a moment to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I'm moving that we table it until the next meeting, but I will certainly defer to Councilmember Testa if she wants to provide any comment on the circumstances.
Okay.
I second
To make
that
sure.
motion. I
Yeah,
second that motion. I feel I
Thank you,
don't
Ron.
have sufficient information either.
Oh, good. Well, you saved me having to go through a little bit of Robert's rules description on this. So we do have a motion on the table to delay this review till the next meeting. My personal comment on that is I do understand completely, given especially the short time frame on this. But I want to turn it over to the club, and I think Julie, did you have something you would like to say? I saw you.
I really appreciate this topic coming forward. I am a strong advocate for accountability, and my understanding is this vote is simply to ask for a full and thorough investigation, that it go on to the Attorney General for that investigation, and I would certainly not oppose doing that. Beyond that, while our city council had lengthy discussion over this last year and concluded that the city council is in fact oversight of our police department, I will share with you my incredibly deep disappointment that I have not even received a briefing from my my department, even though I have asked repeatedly to have it. So I don't have the information to really speak to this either. But I absolutely support an investigation anytime there's a use of deadly force. That's all.
Thank you for that. So to make sure everyone is clear, there is a motion on the table right now to delay, to table this to return for next month's meeting. There was a motion by Sean and a second by Ron. So we can have further discussion on that item, whether or not we would like to delay it till next meeting. So I'm going to open it up for any discussion on whether or not we should delay, and then we'll have a vote on that. So any further discussion on if we should delay till next meeting?
Hi, I'm sorry, I don't really know Robert's rules or point of order or anything.
Go ahead.
But I just would like to say that I agree with Julia's statement that it's really important for situations like this one to have a thorough investigation. And I feel like we wouldn't be doing our due diligence in delaying. As Robin stated in the chat, justice shouldn't be delayed. And I feel like us delaying on this vote and pushing this through would be an injustice to our community.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Can I respond to John's concern about the legal
Yeah.
issue? Yeah, Penal Code Section 835A includes subsection C1, which specifically says that notwithstanding subdivision B, a peace officer is justified in using deadly force upon another person only when the officer reasonably believes, based on the totality of the circumstances, that such force is necessary for either of the following reasons. A, to defend against an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer or to another person, and B, to apprehend a fleeing person for any felony that threatened or resulted in death or serious bodily injury if the officer reasonably believes that the person will cause death or serious bodily injury to another unless immediately apprehended. Where feasible, a peace officer shall, prior to the use of force, make reasonable efforts to identify themselves as a peace officer and to warn that deadly force may be used unless the officer has objectively reasonable grounds to believe the person is aware of those facts. So what we know is that this person walked out of his front door with a knife in his hand, and the police shot him dead. That's, I was a lawyer practicing when the Rodney King case happened, and you could see the video and you could see people, the police in that circumstance for many years said, don't believe the video. He was dangerous. We had to do what we had to do. And it took many, many years for justice to be done in that case. We've seen in Pleasanton, it took years for the Bauer family to get justice done in their case. And our concern is that at this point, the media certainly seems to be in overdrive to present this person as a dangerous person, to lie about what actually took place at the scene of the incident, and to justify, to tell everyone it's okay, we killed this person, but it's fine. And we have to know that it's not fine for police to use deadly force under the new law, which clearly says they have to believe, they can only do it where they reasonably believe, based on the totality of the circumstances, that such force is necessary to defend against an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer or to another person. And I, apologize if it was confusing. I took the shorthand language from Dr. Weber's initial summary of the bill, but that's what it says.
Thank you. And Jackie?
Yeah, earlier, did I hear, Pamela, did you mention that there was a video that is available? Because
there is a video that is available. I don't know if Kelsey, if you can put the link in there. Yes, there is a video.
Not that I want to see it, but I mean, what you see with your own eyes is worth a million pictures, right?
Right. Yeah. I saw the video. I heard the witnesses. There's another gentleman who's come forward on Twitter saying, I was there. The guy walked out the door. They shot him. He wasn't lunging. He wasn't being aggressive. So there's questions about it. And where you have the police investigating themselves or refusing to provide information to the duly constituted authority, in this case, the city council, then you really need an outside agency, which the law does provide for at this point, to take responsibility and to step in. And that's all we're asking is, let's get a clean, impartial investigation. Because it does matter to people who do need police services, that the police should not come out and kill somebody.
Thank you. Any further comments, or are we ready to have a vote on the motion being to delay? Dan, did I see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just willing to say that, I'm not trusting of parochial interests when, police departments kill people. And so, there has to be some higher authority that doesn't have, some kind of piece in the action. So I don't, distrust the city council or distrust the police per se, but I do feel that some, less involved authority be involved with the investigation. And that's as simple as it gets.
Thank you. Any further comments, or are we ready for the vote? All right, seeing no comments, just to clarify, the current item we're voting on, a yes vote would be to bring the item back next month to allow time for further review. A no vote would neither approve the item or disapprove the item on the table. It would simply give the option for us to vote on it this month. So if you would like to put the item off until next month, vote yes. If you would like to keep the option open, there is no motion currently, but to keep the option open to vote on it this month, vote no. Sean.
Evan, before we call the vote, I just want to get clarification. If Councilmember Testa can clarify, it seems to me sounded like she's supportive of this letter as written. I just wanted to clarify that.
Sounds good. Julie, would you mind clarifying?
And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I wanted to make sure. And you're muted, Julie, if I see you nodding your head.
Got it. I really would like to be supported in my request for information. And I really do think that this is the fourth officer involved fatality from the Pleasanton Police Department. And while I really can't, again, I have no information. Everyone here can watch that video and know as much as I know, because I have not been able to release a department briefing, even though I am the oversight of our department. They promise something in the future. I would like the public to say that we want to hear and we want answers and accountability. And I think that this is a voice to do that.
Okay.
It's just saying that we want an investigation, and I think that it's a good thing for the public to ask for that investigation.
Okay, with that, I'd like to retract my motion or modify my motion and move approval of the letter with the edits that we include in the bolded line, that we include the language that is factually cited in PC 835A section C1, which is imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury.
So that is a retraction of the motion that was on the floor and a new motion. Kelsey, were you able to hear the amendment that we would like to the letter? Because I currently don't have editing rights to it.
Yes, we did. We were going to include the specific penal code, right? Am I using my jargon correctly? In the bolded language, that this is the specific law in question that we want to make sure is going to be followed. Yes.
Or you can just state, quote, police officers are supposed to use deadly force only when defending against imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury.
All right. So with that, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion from Sean and a second from Matthew, I believe.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Then with that, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, All in favor of the motion to approve the letter with that one amendment, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay from
Ron.
Ron.
Ron, with insufficient information.
And any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
And we have an abstention from Julie. All right, with that, the motion passes. So thank you very much. So Kelsey, if you can get me the amended version, I will make sure to send it out and we can sign out to that.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to get that to you tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And with that, I'm gonna push through because this is something important that we cover about the bylaws, because with our changes to the bylaws, we made some pretty major changes last month. And the new bylaws require, if we want to make any future changes, we need to start the process this month and then finish it next month. So it is a 2-month process to do it now. So if we don't start it today, it won't happen for 3 months. Here are a couple of issues that came up with the new bylaw amendments that we made. So currently we have changed the bylaws to be in line with the county and state policy, which is for us to only allow the same number of candidates to be endorsed as there are spots on the ballot. So for example, in the DA's race, we would only be able to endorse one because only one person can win. In say a city council race, if it was, top 2 vote getters, we could endorse up to 2 people, 0, 1, or 2 all being options, but we are capped at the number of seats available. We amended our bylaws to have that. We do want to have some discussion. I do want to have some time to discuss if we want to continue to have that in there. I promised we would have some time to talk about that. It is part of the California state policy, the Democratic Party policy, so the Alameda County Party policy, which means that if we change this rule, allowing the old style where we are allowed to vote for as many people as we feel like, it would put us out of compliance. We can then make our case to the county where, we do not necessarily become unchartered automatically. We do have autonomy as a local club, but we would have to go and basically make the case of why we are doing multiple endorsements, making sure that they're okay with it. And if they don't like it, they could demand we change the bylaws to allow only up to the number of seats, or we would lose chartering, would be kind of the process it would go through. So that's one part of the discussion. And then there's a second part of the discussion I want to have, which is because of some of the wording in the bylaws from before and the change that we've made, right now, the only voting that is allowed on endorsements would be voting for individual candidates. So a first past the post voting. We updated our voting for officers when there are more than 2 officers running for a race to use an instant runoff or a ranked choice voting, some system that would allow us to get multiple preferences if there were 3 or more candidates in a officer election. However, that is currently not allowed in the endorsement elections due to some wording in our voting rules. And so I would personally prefer us moving to a ranked choice voting for all the races where there are multiple people involved and there is only a single outcome allowed, such as today. My fear being that there may have been a preferred candidate today, and I am very concerned that we're going to end up with a no endorsement vote simply because of the fact that there were 4 candidates splitting the vote where we might have wanted, someone to get the vote. So those are the 2 items up for discussion. If we can come to some sort of consensus and get a vote on it, we can I will get the wording out, the specific wording, and we can vote on actually amending our bylaws at the next meeting, where we will continue our endorsement process. And I believe the next endorsement process only has 2 people, but just in case there are others, I'd like to be prepared for that. Sean, is your hand just up from the last item? Or did you jump in on this one?
Yes, sorry.
Jackie.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to set up a separate meeting for bylaws discussion so that maybe we could have a real working session and talk about all the implications on the voting and maybe target that. So, because it may take quite a bit of time. I mean, we have the 60%. We probably want to compare that to the state party and the Alameda County party. And it's getting kind of late. I hate to cram this in and make it messed up. The other thing I want to say is, folks, tonight, please do not send the voting ballot to others in the club. I'm seeing several members that were not on the call tonight, were not here at the meeting, and they are not eligible to vote if they were not at the meeting. So I'm going to delete their votes. Please do not send this to others. Thank you. So that's my motion, Evan, if we can maybe set up a separate working session. I don't know if others.
I think that falls perfectly within our bylaws. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Sharon seconds it.
Sharon seconds. So motion by Jackie, a second by Sharon. So Ellis, you were up next. There's discussion on either the motion.
I was just wondering whether the 60% rule holds for tonight's vote. And that was that scrapped also, or does any endorsed candidate?
It's still in there.
60% of the yeses and the nos.
The 60% is still in there. That's why this whole people popping in that were not on the call are affecting the percentage dramatically. So we really can't have that. As soon as we straighten up who was really on the call and I delete these votes, make sure everybody that was on there has their valid vote. I think we may be close to 60% on one of the candidates, but it's close. And these bogus votes in there are messing up the percentages.
Jackie, I emailed you the vote from Sharon and I, since we didn't get the link to go to whatever we were supposed to go to. And the email didn't show up.
Check your email. I resent it to you.
Address, the Rankle family.
I resent it to you. Did you get?
Did you just send it again? Okay, we got it.
Okay. Van?
So I love ranked choice. So if we can integrate ranked choice into any of our voting procedures, I'd approve that.
Okay. So then the motion on the table right now would be that we will have a special meeting, basically, to go through this. We need to have at least 10 members at that meeting in order for any vote on the bylaws to be, able to move forward. Would be the only thing that is of concern, but I'm pretty sure we can get 10 members there. Yeah, that would be the current motion. It's almost 10 o'clock to basically sometime soon, because we will need to make sure we get this together quickly to make sure it's ready for the next meeting.
Can you put my name down there too?
No, I'm gonna have to do it separately.
Okay.
Sorry, Alice, can you mute yourself?
So make sure you keep it then.
With that, the motion on the table is to hold a special meeting to make the bylaws amendments and then bring it back at the following meeting, the March meeting, for final approval. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
So that was a no from Van.
Yep.
And any abstentions? All right. So the motion passes. There will be a special meeting for the bylaws amendments And then we will have the actual wording, the printing going to the club. And we will have that for a final approval at our following meeting. Which brings up just one other point for us to consider that is not on the agenda, so I'm not going to have us vote on it, but it'll also be something we could have a discussion about next meeting. Because of the way this vote was held, if we end up with no abstention or no preference, think about whether or not we want to possibly revisit this endorsement process. So we could possibly come back with a ranked choice vote if bylaws, if we had a no endorsement. Let's see how it goes. We'll talk about that at the next meeting. With that, we have minutes and treasurer's reports, but it is almost 10 o'clock. So I'm going to table those two items and have us return to them next month to get 2 months of minutes, 2 months of treasurer's reports. This meeting was I hope entertaining and informative, but there was maybe a little too much on the agenda.
Can I ask Evan, just for the officers to stay on the call after everybody drops, just for a quick second?
Sounds good. And so with that, I do want to open up the floor if anyone has any last announcements that are super pressing, but please keep them only to things that are direly important, since it is very late right now.
If you would like to attend a campaign meeting for Dinah Becton, Rick Adler is having that at his house on Saturday. I suppose if you got a hold of me, I could plug you into Rick. Everybody has my email address.
It's at 3 o'clock.
It's at 2 o'clock on Saturday.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, excuse me.
Awesome. Anything else?
There's a virtual, I guess it's a movie thing. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, there's a virtual thing going on Earth Week. And if you go to the Citizens Climate Lobby and Education for the TriValley, you can learn about getting tickets to that, and that will help benefit the CCL in the TriValley area. Is that short enough?
Yeah, thank you. Any other announcements? Seeing none, officers, if you can please stay on the call, and everyone else, have a wonderful evening. Good night, and thank you for staying for this nice long meeting.
Thank you, and welcome to our new members.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
night, everyone.
I just wanted to make sure you guys got your vote in here.
You want to kill the recording?
Oh, yeah, let me in. Thank you.